In the heart of a small countryside town, where the aroma of coffee mixes with stories no one dares to tell out loud, an apparently ordinary morning was about to reveal the very worst and the very best of human character. A young waitress, known for her shy smile and gentle nature, struggled to keep her balance amid exhaustion and overdue bills when a wealthy man, wrapped in arrogance and expensive cologne, walked into the diner. He didn't ask, he demanded. He didn't speak, he humiliated. His tone sharpened, every word like a blade, making everyone around hold their breath, powerless in the face of his contempt. That humiliation seemed unavoidable until the bell above the door chimed, announcing the arrival of an unexpected destiny. The heavy thud of boots echoed across the floor, and every gaze turned as a motorcycle club, known for their fierce loyalty and unshakable sense of justice, stepped through the door. The silence that followed was as thick as the tension in the air, and no one could imagine what would happen in the next moments. As the wealthy man continued to belittle the young waitress, her hands trembled with a mixture of fear and frustration. She struggled to keep her voice steady, hoping not to escalate the situation, but his mockery grew louder with each passing second. Other patrons shifted uncomfortably in their seats, whispering among themselves, helpless against his cruel authority. The waitress bit her lip, swallowing back tears, silently questioning why kindness always seemed to break in front of arrogance. And at that precise moment, when humiliation seemed inevitable, destiny answered with a roar of engines. The motorcycle club's leader stepped forward, his presence commanding the room without a single word. He studied the scene, with eyes trained to read trouble instantly. The wealthy man scoffed, assuming their leather jackets and tattoos marked them as nothing more than troublemakers. But the waitress knew better. She had served this club for months, witnessing their quiet generosity, their unspoken code of honor, and the way they protected the overlooked. The wealthy man, blinded by his own ego, failed to realize that he was outnumbered not in fists, but in respect. As tension thickened, the businessman snapped at the waitress again, accusing her of incompetence and demanding compensation for a mistake she never made. The leader calmly stepped between them, his voice steady, not raised, but firm enough to silence the room. He asked the wealthy man to repeat his insults, not out of aggression, but to show the bully the mirror he avoided all his life. The businessman hesitated, his bravado shrinking as eyes focused on him instead of the trembling waitress. For the first time, his confidence faltered. Around them, the other bikers spread out, not threateningly, but protectively, positioning themselves like a shield. They greeted the waitress gently, asking if she was all right, acknowledging her humanity as if it were the simplest and most important act in the world. The businessman tried to laugh it off, pretending the situation was insignificant, but his nervous chuckle betrayed him. He suddenly felt exposed, stripped of the power he wielded so carelessly moments before. The leader leaned closer, eyes unwavering, reminding the wealthy man of an unwritten rule. Respect is not purchased with money, but earned through character. His words were brief, but their weight settled deep. Patrons watched silently, realizing that sometimes it takes outsiders to reveal the cracks in a community's conscience. The wealthy man swallowed hard, his arrogance dissolving into discomfort as he slowly understood that he was no longer the one controlling the narrative. The atmosphere in the diner shifted as the confrontation settled into a thick, unspoken awareness. The wealthy man attempted to regain control by asserting his influence, boasting about his connections and status as if privilege could shield him from accountability. Yet each word he spoke only deepened the contrast between his empty pride and the club's unwavering integrity. The leader listened patiently, arms crossed, allowing the businessman to exhaust his excuses. Meanwhile, the waitress stood quietly, still processing the fact that someone had stepped in for her when she felt most invisible. One of the bikers gently invited the waitress to sit for a moment, offering her a glass of water to calm her shaking nerves. She hesitated, unsure if she should step away from her duties, but the club's presence reassured her. The leader continued speaking to the businessman, reminding him that true strength is measured by how one treats those with less. The businessman's shoulders lowered as he struggled to respond, his voice weaker now, stripped of entitlement. For the first time, he looked directly at the waitress, acknowledging her existence beyond her apron. The diners watched in awe as the club's approach remained peaceful yet firm, proving that confrontation does not require cruelty to be effective. Their silence was not passive. It was powerful, intensifying every word spoken. The wealthy man shifted uncomfortably under the weight of collective judgment, realizing that his reputation meant nothing without dignity. He offered a half-hearted apology, hoping it would be enough to end the ordeal, but the leader's expression revealed that empty words would not suffice. Instead of escalating the situation, the leader turned his focus to teaching, reminding everyone around that small acts of kindness carry more weight than grand displays of wealth. He spoke of understanding, patience, and the importance of seeing the person behind the uniform or job title. The businessman listened, not out of choice, but because the truth spoke louder than his pride ever could. Something inside him cracked, allowing vulnerability to seep through the armor of arrogance. The waitress watched quietly, tears welling in her eyes, not from fear, but gratitude. She realized she had been ignoring her own worth, believing that disrespect was simply part of her job. The leader's words echoed through her mind, challenging her to value herself beyond tips and forced smiles. The wealthy man, now visibly humbled, lowered his gaze, recognizing that he had crossed a line no amount of money could erase. And in that quiet moment, the entire diner understood that this encounter would resonate long after the engines faded into the distance. As minutes passed, the tension slowly dissolved, replaced by a quiet reflection that settled over the room like a soft blanket. The wealthy man sat down, his posture stiff, unsure of what to do next. For the first time, he looked small, overwhelmed by the unexpected shift in power. The leader motioned for the waitress to take a breath, assuring her that she deserved respect not because of her uniform, but because she was a human being. She nodded gently, holding back the flood of emotions that threatened to spill. Her co-workers glanced at her with newfound admiration, suddenly aware of how much she had endured silently. The club members took their seats calmly, ordering coffee and breakfast without any theatrics. They spoke softly, laughing among themselves, their camaraderie radiating like warmth through the cafe. Their presence, once intimidating to those who judged by appearance, now seemed comforting. The wealthy man watched them closely, struggling to reconcile his preconceived notions with the reality unfolding in front of him. It was as if he was witnessing a truth he never cared to see. Kindness often wears unexpected jackets. The waitress returned to work slowly, still trembling but standing taller. When she delivered the plates to the bikers, they thanked her sincerely, their tone gentle and genuine. She smiled, a real smile this time, feeling seen rather than overlooked. The wealthy man cleared his throat, attempting to approach her, but his words tangled with awkwardness. He muttered another apology, this time quieter, more thoughtful, though still laced with fear of public judgment. People watched, waiting to see if humility would finally reach his heart. The leader noticed the hesitation in the businessman's eyes and invited him to sit at their table. Gasps rippled across the cafe. No one saw that coming. The wealthy man froze, unsure if it was a trap or a lesson. Slowly, he accepted, sitting stiffly beside men he once would have dismissed. The leader began to speak, sharing brief fragments of their experiences, losses, hardships, battles with judgment. Each story peeled another layer off the businessman's defenses, revealing a truth he had never faced. Everyone carries wounds, even those who appear strong. By the end of their conversation, silence settled again, but this silence felt different. It was heavy with realization, empathy, and the weight of second chances. The wealthy man's eyes glistened slightly, though he hid it behind a forced blink. For the first time in a long while, he listened instead of lectured, and those around him realized that sometimes the most powerful transformations begin not with confrontation, but with understanding. As the cafe returned to its normal buzz, the waitress noticed the wealthy man staring at his reflection in the window, as if searching for someone he had lost long ago. His expensive watch suddenly felt meaningless, unable to measure the time he had wasted dismissing others. He caught her gaze and offered a small nod, more genuine than any apology he had attempted before. She hesitated, then nodded back, accepting not the words, but the change behind them. It was a silent agreement that growth begins with acknowledgement. The bikers finished their meals, leaving generous tips not just for the waitress, but for the entire staff. Their generosity spread whispers across the cafe, painting them less as outlaws and more as guardians. As the leader stood to leave, he placed a hand on the wealthy man's shoulder, leaning in with a final message. Respect the people who make your life easier, because without them, your luxury means nothing. The businessman swallowed hard, the truth lodging itself deep in his chest like a weight he was finally willing to carry. The waitress watched the club exit, their boots echoing across the floor like footsteps of justice. When the door closed behind them, she felt a mixture of relief and empowerment. Her co-workers approached to check on her, offering support she didn't expect. She realized she had been working in silence for too long, afraid to speak up about mistreatment. Yet today, strangers had defended her louder than she ever defended herself. That realization sparked a quiet fire inside her. Meanwhile, the wealthy man remained seated, lost in thought. Memories flickered, moments when he could have chosen kindness, but opted for superiority instead. He wondered how many lives he had bruised without noticing. Shame settled in, not destructive, but constructive, urging him to reconsider the way he navigated the world. He promised himself quietly that this would not be another fleeting moment of regret. He intended to make amends, not with grand gestures, but with everyday respect. When he finally rose to leave, he approached the waitress one last time. He thanked her for her patience, not as a transaction, but as recognition of her worth. She accepted, her voice steadier now, her confidence glowing through tired eyes. As he stepped out into the sunlight, he felt lighter, as if shedding a skin that no longer fit. And deep inside, the waitress felt something too, the beginning of her own journey towards self-respect, fueled by a moment she would never forget. The following day, the cafe buzzed with curious conversations about what had happened. Regular customers returned, not only for breakfast, but to catch glimpses of the waitress who had become a quiet symbol of resilience. She moved through the tables with a newfound energy, her shoulders no longer hunched beneath silent burdens. The memory of the motorcycle club lingered, not as a threat, but as a reminder that strength often arrives when least expected. She wondered if she would ever see them again, though the echo of their support already lived inside her. As the morning rush settled, the wealthy man returned, not with arrogance, but with humble eyes and hesitant steps. Whispers traveled quickly, but this time the room watched with curiosity rather than fear. He approached the counter gently, asking if he could speak with the waitress for a moment. Her heart raced, unsure of his intentions, but she agreed. He explained that he had spent the previous night reflecting, realizing how his habits had molded him into someone he never intended to be. His voice trembled slightly as he admitted his faults. In response, the waitress listened quietly, her gaze soft yet steady. She accepted his apology, not to ease his guilt, but to free herself from carrying the weight of anger. She realized forgiveness did not mean forgetting. It meant choosing growth over resentment. Her simple, sincere response struck the wealthy man deeper than any lecture could. He left an envelope on the counter, not filled with money, but with recommendations for better working conditions he planned to present to cafe management. It was his first step toward real change. The staff gathered around the waitress after he left, praising her courage. Even those who once ignored injustice admitted they had been too silent. Their voices blended with a promise to stand up for one another instead of shrinking behind fear. The cafe began to transform subtly. Customers treated the staff with more warmth. Coffee tasted a little sweeter, and laughter returned to places it had long been missing. It felt like the ripples of that morning had stretched far beyond a single argument. Late that night, the waitress sat alone in the cafe after closing, staring at the empty chairs. She thought about how one moment of kindness, delivered with conviction, could reshape hearts. She whispered a quiet thanks to the biker club, wherever they were, hoping they knew the impact they had left. She didn't need them to return to feel protected anymore. Their message was carved into her spirit. And for the first time in a long while, she felt proud simply to be herself. Days turned into weeks, and the wealthy man slowly began changing his reputation within the town. He donated supplies to struggling businesses, volunteered at community events, and most importantly, treated every worker with genuine respect. His transformation surprised many, but the waitress watched from a distance with quiet satisfaction. She understood that true change happens not in grand gestures, but in consistent action. And as she witnessed his gradual shift, she realized she too was evolving in her own way. Meanwhile, the motorcycle club remained absent from the cafe, but rumors of their good deeds surfaced in hushed conversations. People spoke of how they protected those who could not stand for themselves, using empathy as their compass. Their legend grew, painting them as guardians rather than outlaws. The waitress held onto those stories with warmth, feeling connected to something larger than her small corner of the world. When customers spoke of the club, they no longer whispered fear, they whispered admiration. One afternoon, the cafe faced a sudden surge of customers due to a local event. The staff panicked, plates clattered, and coffee spilled. The waitress took charge, guiding her co-workers with calm authority she never knew she possessed. She spoke firmly but kindly, her voice steady, her confidence unshakable. Customers noticed her leadership, offering patience instead of complaints. The cafe manager watched closely, realizing she had been undervalued for far too long. After the rush ended, the manager called her aside, offering a promotion and a raise. Her eyes widened, hands trembling, but this time with disbelief rather than fear. She accepted, overwhelmed by gratitude and pride. The staff celebrated quietly, understanding the significance of her journey. She had risen not because of spectacle, but because she dared to believe she deserved better. It was a victory stitched together by countless small moments of courage. That evening, as she locked the cafe door, she paused on the sidewalk, watching the sunset paint the sky with colors she had never bothered to notice before. The wind whispered through the streets, carrying echoes of roaring engines from distant roads. She smiled softly, realizing she was no longer waiting to be rescued. She had become her own protector, forged through kindness, adversity, and the unexpected bravery of strangers. And somewhere far away, she imagined the motorcycle club riding beneath the same sky, proud of the spark they had helped ignite within her. As the weeks continued to pass, the townspeople started to notice subtle changes throughout the community. Customers began tipping a little more generously, speaking a little more gently, and offering help where silence once lived. The waitress observed these shifts with quiet wonder, realizing how one ripple of compassion could widen into waves. The wealthy man continued visiting the cafe regularly, always greeting her with sincere respect. His presence no longer stirred tension, but carried a calm humility that slowly softened even the most skeptical hearts. One morning, as she served breakfast, a group of teenagers entered the cafe, laughing loudly and making a mess at their table. The waitress approached them with kindness, encouraging better manners instead of harsh reprimands. Her words, gentle yet firm, surprised the group. They apologized, embarrassed by the reflection she offered without judgment. The wealthy man watched from his corner, deeply impressed by her ability to inspire dignity in others without force. He saw within her something he lacked for far too long, a heart strong enough to lead with compassion. Later that day, the wealthy man approached the manager, suggesting programs that would better support the staff, extra breaks, fairer distribution of tips, and training for handling difficult customers. His tone was respectful, his recommendations thoughtful. The manager, initially hesitant, agreed to consider the changes. The waitress, overhearing fragments of the conversation, felt a small spark of gratitude flare. People truly could grow, she thought, if given the right moment to reflect. Meanwhile, new faces arrived at the cafe, drawn by rumors of the biker club's mysterious visit. Some came hoping to witness something dramatic, but left surprised by the peaceful harmony instead. The waitress smiled at the irony. What they expected was chaos, but what they found was community. She realized that stories often began with conflict, but the chapters that mattered most were written in healing. Each time she wiped down a table or delivered a coffee with warmth, she rewrote a narrative once dominated by fear. As dusk approached, the waitress sat on her break bench behind the cafe, watching fireflies dance across the parking lot. She reflected on the countless small interactions that subtly sculpted a brighter world. She ran her fingers along the cool metal railing, remembering the day the motorcycle club had stood in this very spot. Their boots had left no permanent mark on the ground, yet somehow their presence had carved a lasting impression into her heart. It was then she understood. Sometimes the people who appear and disappear quietly are the ones who shape us the most. One quiet afternoon, the roar of engines returned, distant at first, then steadily growing louder. Heads turned toward the windows as the familiar motorcycle club parked outside. The waitress froze, her breath catching in her throat. Customers whispered excitedly, their curiosity renewed. The leader walked through the door, removing his sunglasses with a calm smile. He greeted the waitress as though no time had passed, asking how she had been, his voice warm and genuine. She felt a rush of emotions, remembering how her life had shifted since their last visit. The club took their usual seats, and the cafe filled with that same quiet strength that had once silenced cruelty. The wealthy man happened to be there that day, sitting near the window. He recognized the leader instantly, his posture straightening with respect, not fear. The leader approached him, offering a handshake instead of confrontation. This simple gesture stunned the room. The wealthy man accepted it with sincere gratitude, acknowledging the unspoken bond that had sparked his transformation. The waitress served them with confidence, moving through the cafe like someone who belonged in every corner of the world. The leader noticed the promotion badge on her apron, raising an eyebrow in approval. She blushed, admitting that the courage she found that day had propelled her forward. He nodded, explaining that real strength begins not in moments of battle, but in the quiet decision to stand tall. His words wrapped around her like armor, reinforcing what she already knew deep inside. After breakfast, the leader asked the wealthy man to step outside. The customers watched anxiously through the windows as the two men spoke privately. Their conversation was calm, punctuated by thoughtful nods and serious expressions. When they finally re-entered, something in the wealthy man's demeanor had softened even further. He thanked the club openly, expressing gratitude for the impact they had on his life. The room fell silent, touched by his honesty. For the first time, he wasn't speaking to elevate himself. He was speaking to elevate others. As the motorcycle club prepared to leave, the leader placed a small emblem on the counter, its metal surface engraved with a simple phrase, "Honor in silence." He told the waitress it was a reminder that true protection often happens quietly, without applause or recognition. She clutched the emblem tightly, tears shimmering in her eyes. The roar of engines filled the air once more, fading as the club disappeared down the horizon. And the waitress stood motionless, holding the weight of their message close to her heart, knowing that she would carry their legacy long after the dust settled behind them. In the days that followed the club's return, the emblem remained safely tucked inside the waitress's apron pocket, its weight both comforting and inspiring. Each time she felt overwhelmed, she slipped a hand inside to touch the cool metal, reminding herself of the strength she was still learning to see within. Rumors continued circulating in town, some exaggerated, others whispered with awe. Yet none of them captured the quiet truth she carried. The greatest battles are often fought within the heart. Her co-workers noticed her confidence blooming, and customers treated her with newfound admiration, not out of pity, but respect. One evening, as the cafe prepared to close, the wealthy man returned with a proposal for the manager. Inspired by the club's visit and the waitress's resilience, he offered to fund a community program aimed at supporting employees facing harassment or mistreatment in the workplace. The manager accepted with gratitude, realizing their small town had underestimated the importance of emotional support. The wealthy man looked toward the waitress, silently acknowledging that she had been the spark for this change. Though she blushed, she held her head high, grateful not for recognition, but for progress. As word spread about the program, other businesses in town joined the effort, building a network of empathy that slowly wove itself into the fabric of daily life. The waitress found herself speaking at meetings, sharing her story not with bitterness, but with hope. Her voice, once quiet and hesitant, grew steady and compassionate. People listened, learning that kindness was not weakness, but a force capable of shifting entire communities. And with every word she spoke, an invisible thread of healing stitched deeper within her. Meanwhile, the wealthy man continued his personal journey, attending community events and listening rather than leading. He approached situations with humility, asking how he could help instead of assuming he already knew. His transformation was not perfect. There were moments he stumbled, mistakes that reminded him of the long road ahead. But he no longer hid behind arrogance. The town watched with cautious optimism, understanding that growth was never linear, but always worth attempting. Late one night, as the cafe lights dimmed, the waitress cleaned the counter slowly, reflecting on how drastically her life had shifted since that morning of humiliation. She no longer viewed herself as small or invisible. Instead, she saw the strength in her scars, the quiet courage in her voice, and the unshakable resolve in her heart. She touched the emblem one more time, whispering a silent thank you to those who had shown her that she mattered. And beneath the moonlight filtering through the windows, she realized she had become exactly who she once needed, someone brave enough to stand. Weeks later, the town's annual festival painted the streets with music, lights, and laughter. People from neighboring towns arrived, adding to the lively atmosphere. Food vendors lined the sidewalks, children chased balloons, and local musicians filled the air with warm melodies. The waitress attended the event with co-workers, her laughter blending effortlessly with the crowd. She noticed familiar faces everywhere, people she had once served behind a counter now greeting her with genuine smiles and heartfelt conversations. As the sun began to set, the deep rumble of engines echoed down the street once again. Heads turned, and the crowd parted, revealing the motorcycle club arriving like a familiar storm. But this time, instead of fear, cheers erupted from every corner. The leader nodded respectfully to the townspeople as he parked near the festival stage. The waitress approached him, her steps confident and her smile radiant. He congratulated her on the community initiative, admitting he had heard whispers of her newfound courage spreading far beyond cafe walls. The wealthy man approached shortly after, greeting the club warmly. Their interaction was calm, grounded in mutual respect. He thanked the leader publicly, acknowledging how their intervention had reshaped his life. The leader simply replied that real change had come from within, sparked by the moment he chose humility over pride. The wealthy man nodded, accepting the truth without argument. The waitress watched the exchange with pride, knowing she had witnessed something rare: accountability without shame. As the festival lights glowed brighter, the leader handed the waitress a small chain to attach to the emblem she carried. He explained that it was no longer just a token. It was a symbol of growth, resilience, and self-worth. He told her she had earned it not through hardship alone, but through her choice to rise. Tears welled in her eyes as she clasped the chain around her neck, feeling the metal rest against her heart like a shield forged from compassion. When the night reached its peak, the motorcycle club prepared to leave. The leader gave one final nod to the waitress, a silent promise that their paths might cross again. As the engines roared into the dark horizon, the crowd cheered, celebrating not them, but everything they represented. The waitress touched the emblem gently, feeling its warmth against her skin. She smiled, realizing that although they had ridden away, the legacy they left behind would continue to echo through the streets, the cafe, and the hearts forever changed by a single act of courage. In the quiet aftermath of the festival, the waitress walked home beneath strings of soft lights, fingers brushing gently against the emblem resting over her heart. Every memory of hardship now carried new meaning. Each insult had shaped her resilience. Each moment of doubt had taught her courage. She realized that the true impact of the motorcycle club was never about intimidation. It was about reminding her, and everyone watching, that dignity is worth defending, even when your voice shakes. The wealthy man's transformation became proof that change is possible when humility is chosen over pride. And the town, once indifferent, now thrived under the gentle ripple of compassion. As days turned into weeks, the cafe no longer felt like a battlefield. It became a sanctuary, where laughter bloomed, respect flowed freely, and kindness served as the unspoken currency among strangers. The waitress noticed how customers thanked the staff more, how coworkers supported one another, and how the air felt lighter, as if the walls themselves had exhaled. She wore the emblem not to boast, but to remember that strength doesn't always arrive with noise. Sometimes it appears quietly, through a hand on your shoulder, a voice that speaks up, or the courage to stand taller. The wealthy man's journey echoed through the community, teaching others that growth begins with accountability. He continued his work quietly, helping where he once harmed, offering empathy where he once judged. His story reminded everyone that apologies are not words, but actions repeated consistently. And though some skeptics doubted his sincerity, the waitress saw the truth in his steady eyes. The truth that hearts can change when cracked open by understanding. His evolution became the unexpected thread that stitched the town closer together. Years later, whenever the rumble of distant engines echoed across the road, the town paused, not with fear, but gratitude. Stories of the motorcycle club became legend, passed from table to table like cherished folklore. Children learned that bravery isn't measured by strength alone, but by the willingness to protect those who feel unseen. Adults learned that respect is not earned through wealth or titles, but through kindness and humility. And the waitress, standing behind her counter, learned that she had always held power within her. The club merely reminded her how to use it. So before you leave, take a moment to reflect. In a world filled with noise, who will you choose to be? The voice that belittles or the voice that lifts? If you believe in honor, empathy, and the quiet strength found in ordinary people, then join this journey. Subscribe to the channel, like this video, and share your thoughts in the comments. Your voice matters, and together, we can echo change far louder than any roaring engine ever could.